So let's talk about who you are targeting with this capital raise.
So Quona Capital is a venture firm focused on fintech for inclusion. So we are investing with a very simple thesis. We believe that financial services enabled by technology can radically improve access and quality for the underserved in emerging markets. Africa is one of 3 regions that we cover. We have an active portfolio of over 20 investments, all in technology-enabled innovators, and we think that Africa is a big part of our overall global story.
So how are you going to invest this money? Are you looking to acquire? Are you looking to invest in startup fintech companies, or are you looking to invest in established companies?
So we invest in what we call scale-up stage companies. Right. So they've passed the pure startup, so they're not pre-revenue. They have a proof of concept. They've shown what we call product market fit, and they're about to scale, and our capital is catalytic to help them reach that next level. Yeah. So
I imagine you'd have done your homework before you decided on the capital raise. What was it that excited you, that made you decide you needed to come in with some extra capital?
So we actually manage existing funds. Right. We are a venture firm that's SEC regulated, so we have a current fund under management. It's called the Action Frontier Inclusion Fund. It's a $142 million fund that was oversubscribed by leading institutional investors, investment banks, insurance companies, payments, pension funds, university endowments, and they are all excited by the same thing we're excited about, which is the potential of emerging markets to show the rest of the world how to powerfully leverage technology. And I think there's no better showcase in Africa.
Yeah, Monica, I know you're constrained to talk about the specifics around the capital raise, but I wanted to know where you are looking to invest it when we're talking about the African continent.
Yes, thank you. And again, we are SEC regulated, so we can't talk about any current raise, but I'll talk to you about our investment strategy, which both governs our current fund as well as future funds. So we currently have 3 investments in Africa, and I would say they're very consistent with the themes. We see small business financing as a huge theme. In Africa, small businesses represent over 65% of GDP growth and more than that of employment. And we think financing them and helping unlock their potential is a key thesis. And an example of a current investment is Yoko, a mobile point of sale in South Africa that's really helping small businesses with their payment solution. Another great example is insurance. So we have another portfolio company in South Africa called All Life that uses robo-advising and digital underwriting to provide insurance to people who are underserved, like people with diabetes or HIV/AIDS. And so insurance, small business lending, we've looked a lot at agri and the supply chain, e-commerce. So these are sectors where technology is being leveraged to really change the unit economics of these businesses. And we think there's a great potential for investment.
Yeah, fintech is new, of course, around Africa and, of course, around other parts of the world as well. So what do you do about trying to make sure that people actually understand the companies that you guys are seeking to invest in? I would imagine there's a lot of education involved.
So we're an impact investor, meaning that we take transparency and disclosure very seriously. We evaluate and diligence companies, and all the ones I just mentioned, All Life, Yoko, Zona is another mobile financial services company in South Africa, work hard to make sure the customer understands exactly the offering being presented, understands the pricing, understands the consequences and other value proposition. So that's a big part of what we do, and we do that because we want to separate the good actors from the less scrupulous ones.
Now, one of the things that you have to deal with as an investor that is based outside the continent is, of course, having to deal with the multiple currencies that we know operate around the African continent. Before this conversation, I was speaking to a fixed income specialist from one of the big investment houses here about the currencies and the rand. Our currency here in South Africa, and just in the past 2 days, has certainly swung between 40 and 50 cents. So it can be very volatile indeed. How to manage that?
So it's why we're equity investors and not fixed income. So our time horizon is 5 to 7 years. We are looking for real value creation. That's my first answer. Secondly, we invest across geographies. So we look not just at South Africa, but Nigeria and Kenya are very interesting markets to us, among others in the sub-Saharan African continent. We also invest in Latin America and Asia. And we bring, in fact, Quona means something in every region where we work. In Swahili, it means to see. And so the definition or the meaning is that we see the connections, that what we have in common, again, in terms of the radical potential of technology to improve lives, is much more important than what differentiates us.
Yeah. One of the points I was raising with the guy I was talking to you about earlier is the issue of rising U.S. interest rates and their impact on emerging markets. The suggestion being that, you know, with U.S. interest rates increasing, we're seeing a lot of money flowing back into developed markets. From your perspective, what does that do to you? Do you fly with the crowd, or you stick to the, hopefully, great values that you're seeing on the African continent?
We're actually increasing our presence in the African continent. We think that we love going against the herd. So we actually think that the potential in Africa has never been more promising. You look at any statistic, GDP growth, look at employment rates, look at the political trends of democratic, peaceful elections. Again, I think the rest of the world has a lot to learn from Africa these days.